Today in the National Security Daily Briefing, we'll be talking about the entertainment events industry and its links to political parties and national security. Welcome to our show. How deep is the rabbit hole, Alice? Well, today we're going to talk about identifying risks and threats to national security. In this case, we will be talking about entertainment events and how it could represent a threat to national security of a country. And here we can see an iceberg, like the one that hit the Titanic. At first sight, it may seem like a small iceberg, but once you dig deeper into it, just like in Alice in Wonderland's rabbit hole, you might discover a whole new world is behind that threat, and once you see the bigger picture. So let's start by analyzing Mexico's current situation. Mexico is very much like a Titanic being hit by an iceberg, being sink while passengers applaud. We can see that during the Peña Nieto administration, there was rampant corruption between government officials. There was a reported mishandling of 258,000 million pesos, only considering governors that belonged to the official party that was governing Mexico at the time, that was the PRI party. In other instances, some auditing offices, such as the Auditing Office of Baja California, official motto at the time was zero observations or zero auditing findings. You will find that will be like very not good motto for an office, if you're in charge of finding and discovering frauds and your motto is zero findings, that doesn't give the best communication to your employees that are in charge of finding and observing situations. Now let's explore Alice's rabbit hole and how deep it goes. Let's explore the link between politics and entertainment events. Well, to begin with, we must understand how deep is the rabbit hole. For starts, we know that in Mexico, the entertainment events are tax exempted, and that tax exemption represents 0.0063% of the gross domestic product. That is an approximate of 1,000 million pesos. Just for the fiscal year, in this case, we're talking of 2010, I believe. With that kind of money, you could cover 30% of the resources that are used for health services, and 10% of the infrastructure for rural roads in the country. Well, in the local level, we can see that many administrations provide this tax exemption, application of tax exemptions to entertainment events tax rate in the case of political parties, which are not susceptible of tax rate when the money that is generated by these entertainment events or massive concerts goes directly to the operating to cover operating means of the political parties. An important note is that in order to be considered tax exempt, the whole income product of the entertainment events must be destination must be political parties' operational expenses. Now, we must acknowledge that this creates a situation in Mexico in which there must be an ethical concern. And that ethical concern is the economical and political control over artistic expression as a result of the tax exemption, in which political parties have an advantage in regards to all other promoters of entertainment events in the country, because they are tax exempted when organizing their events. Not only theater, but also massive concerts. Now, we must also acknowledge that there's always been a very strong link between entertainment and organized crime. We can remember as the oldest image that comes into mind when we talk about organized crime is probably Al Capone's Chicago, in which there was dancing girls in bars and that were controlled by gangsters. This situation of the tax exemption that it has been granted to political parties when conducting and organizing entertainment events in order to finance its activities, its political activities, creates a weak oversight of the records of each entertainment event that exists in every state in Mexico. It creates a weak oversight opportunity as a result of being cataloged as tax exempted, because you will have interventors that will go into these concerts, and they are in charge of making sure that all the tickets are counted in order to know how many tickets were actually sold. And once there's no real use for that information, because it will not be used to determine a tax, well, then there's really a weak oversight by these interventors, these state interventors. This weak oversight could result in over-reported ticket sales, that is, reporting more tickets sold than actually in reality were sold, or under-reporting ticket sales of massive events, that is, telling the authorities that you sold less tickets than the actual number you really sold. And this translates into two terms, actually. When you underreport ticket sales, you are really talking about money laundering. Oh, no, sorry, about tax evasion. And when you overreport the sales of tickets, when you say you sold more tickets than you really in reality sold, in that case, you are talking about money laundering. In both cases, official records and accounts of events attendance can result in altering of official records. Well, in the state of Guanajuato, in 2013, there was a newspaper that reported that there was 122 entertainment events that had presented tax evasion, with many of the biggest stars at the moment, like Luis Miguel, Shakira, Jenny Rivera, Los Tigres del Norte, Juan Gabriel, and Santana, among others. Also, the local auditing office, revenue office, reported that political parties were renting their tax exemption status to the real organizers of events in order for tax evasion purposes. That is, they pass these events like being organized by political parties, which only had tax exemption when the whole revenue of the events were destined to the political parties' bank accounts. But this was not the case. Their political status, their tax exemption status, was rented by political parties to these promoters and organizers of events in order to evade taxes. In this case, we had a list of political parties, the total income that was generated by these events, concerts, and here we have the tax that was omitted and the percentage that represented that tax that was omitted. And only a year later, the audit report was no longer accessible in the internet. Actually, it was not that big of a news in Mexico. This was during that only 50% of there's a big consideration that only 50% of a political party resources may come from non-public funds. That is, by its auto-finance activities, such as the organization of entertainment events. We also have that some political candidates have run with the idea of, like, for example, in here, one candidate had an idea of a $100 million entertainment events to be organized in the state of Baja California. The project was called Big Baja California, and it was to consolidate the image of Baja California in the international arena by duplicating tourists to the state while generating more than $100 million by organizing concerts in which such artists such as Paul McCartney, Pink Floyd, Roger Waters, U2, and the Rolling Stones would be invited to the state. Another consideration that you must be considered, is that many tickets, promotional tickets, are handled freely to people in order to promote the events. And there is not a big control over these tickets. Now let's talk about 2010, and let's present just a small case. And we're like, in this case, we'll talk about Baja California. Well, in the first semester of 2010, in Tijuana, we can see in blue and in green no, sorry, in blue and in red, the events that were organized by political parties. That is in January, February, March, April, May, and June. As you can see, the blue line and the red line is really larger than the green line that represents the events that were organized by your normal organizer that wasn't a political party organizing an event. You had such events such as Ricky Martin. You had theatrical events like the Smurfs. You had such events as Juan Gabriel. And you could see that during the first semester in Tijuana, the massive events income, 80% of it was generated by political parties, of the income generated by massive concerts. 80% belonged to political parties. Only, in this case, 20% was income generated by massive events organized by promoters, right, by real organizers that wasn't tax exempted. The ticket sales for the first semester of 2010 just in Tijuana, 47% of all the tickets sales belonged to events that were organized by political parties. So you had that 47% of the tickets, of the whole tickets that had been sold in that city, and that the income generated, 80% belonged to political parties. That means that the tickets sold by political parties were higher priced than those by other organizers. Now, the average ticket price of political parties was 277 pesos at the time, while non-political parties organizers' price of tickets were, in average, 60 pesos. That meant that the big artists, the artists that you will take your daughter to see, or your wife, or your spouse, or your friends, will most likely be an artist that was brought by a political party and that was tax exempted. Now, those were the events that were organized only in one semester in that year, and only in one city in Mexico, a big city like Tijuana. Well, when you really see how deep the rabbit hole is, Little Alice, you will see that once these political parties organized their events in the whole country in Mexico during a year, they had to present an information to the Electoral College of Mexico. And oh surprise, Little Alice, what do we have here? Well, the document is called Format IA-3, IA-3, and it's the detail of income of out of finance of political parties. Well, in point number 2, we have entertainment, number of events, and the amount generated by those events. This information was received by the political college, the Federal Political College of Mexico, the country, on March 31 of 2011, in which the events of 2010 were reported. Well, in the case of this political party, which in Tijuana during that same year had generated almost 80% of the income that was generated by massive entertainment events. Well, how much do you think they reported to federal college authorities? Well, they reported 0 entertainment events, and they reported an amount of 0 pesos generated by entertainment events. Meanwhile, in reality, Alice, you had that only in 6 months they had generated 80% of all the income by massive concerts and theater in the city. Only in one city. We're talking that Mexico has thousands of cities. Therefore, you can understand how deep this rabbit hole is, in which there is a big danger because you have official records of each state revenue office not matching with those of the records of the electoral college of the country that audits political parties. And on the meanwhile, you have a situation in which in Mexico, the Federal Revenue Office does not consider the entertainment industry as an industry vulnerable to money laundering. In the official revenue office, Federal Revenue Office of Mexico, the entertainment industry is not stated as an industry that's vulnerable to money laundering. That is the size of the rabbit hole that we're talking about. Now, you may ask yourself, of these 258,000 million pesos that all the governors were reported to mishandle during the Peña Nieto administration, how was all this money laundered? How many of the organizers of concerts are really the real organizers of concerts? I mean, are the real owners of the business? And how much of that business might be really just money laundering of corruption funds? The result. Now you have another big issue that apparently is not happening, that might happen someday. And that big issue is that 50% of the income of a political party may come from out-of-finance activities such as the organization of entertainment events. But if you have little oversight over these events, you might be injecting black money into political campaigns by over-reporting ticket sales that really didn't occur in order to inject funds into the arcs of political parties. That may come from organized crime or by any other foreign government that might be interested in financing a political campaign. Now, if you might have a political party in which its income coming from entertainment events and its number of events and its amount reported in format IA3 represents a very big number, it will be very troublesome because there wouldn't be really a way to determining if those sales really happened of tickets or it didn't happen. Another big problem in Mexico as a country is that online ticket sales of events are not even considered in the legality of and in the operation of the Internal Revenue offices. There is no department in Internal Revenue offices that is in charge of making sure that the tickets reported on electronic systems is accurate. Meaning that you could report that you sold thousands of tickets online and there will be no actual way of making sure that that is true. The only way you have of proving it is counting the tickets at the moment of the event, and that is done by interventors, by Internal Revenue Office interventors, which can alter records. And if you have at the same time a country in which the entertainment industry is not considered a vulnerable activity to money laundering, then you have yourself a big problem. One that in this case could be a national security threat. Why? Well, let's see the bigger picture. The threat is tax evasion, money laundering, and political parties. Political parties use in order to launder money for campaigns, for political campaigns, or you have political parties renting their tax exemption status so businessmen, shady businessmen, can evade taxes, which in the same purpose is risky and it's a big threat, because if you are facilitating this tax evasion, you're probably doing it for a reason, and that reason might be that you might be, as a political party or as a political figure, receiving money for such favors. Well, Alice, that was the rabbit hole and the daily briefing for today.